So I'm curious if there's anything else on the schedule. Also, hi.
Hey, John. I'm still here.
All right. I'm going to, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring this up. And it looks like their screen is done. So I'm going to stop sharing that screen. And if anybody's interested, I can make you a speaker and we can start talking about Airmeet and things along those lines and debrief. That was a really cool event. It's interesting it ended a little bit early, but I loved all of the stuff that I saw.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was great. I kind of got lost with some of the non-null stuff, but there was also a lot of new things in there for people just getting started that made sense and were applicable.
Yeah, agreed. Shrop, I'm adding you to the stage. And I'm going to turn on my own video. Yo, how's it going?
Hey, good. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Awesome.
And if anybody
Brian, you had
else
some good questions
wants on
too.
the stage, by all means.
Yeah, I think you had some good questions for the audience, for the panelists too. Those were good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised to see so many of my questions get asked. But I was going to say, I think it might be good to maybe go through everybody who wants to, and talk about what they were most excited about from all of the announcements.
Who wants to start? Question mark. I can start. For whatever that's worth. So I did take some notes, which I'm happy to share with you guys, as per usual. My favorite, I love that they are tying the designer and developer together, because I think that Flutter does a really, really good job of letting us do this. You don't see this on our current shared screen, but the overlay that you'll see on the YouTube stream was something I made in Figma. I love Figma. I think it is a very nice tool. And it seems like as Philip was going over the things that you should be considering as you're doing this design, I really think that was a nice lead into the things that were super useful. I guess we could probably just do this at a round robin instead of one person laundry listing things. So that was my favorite.
I'm excited about Flutter for Web being stable.
Agreed.
That one's simple, but it's just nice to see it there.
Yeah, I guess I can go next. I think the biggest two things for me were desktop support being stable. I'm pretty bullish about the idea that I think desktop is has a significant room for improvement as far as the development experience goes, compared to something like web, where it's probably always going to be easier for you as a web developer to build web applications than it will be for you as a Flutter developer. And they're most likely going to always be more performant unless something magical happens with WebAssembly down the line. But with desktop, we've seen this world where Electron has kind of like taken over everything. And you look at between having Slack running in your browser and VS Code running, you pretty much don't have any memory left over for your computer. So being able to build performant applications without having to write them in the native language, I think is going to be huge with Flutter. And along those lines, seeing that Ubuntu is heavily invested, like they built their design toolkit in Flutter. They're building all their applications going forward in Flutter, and they actually built their install screen in Flutter. And then also seeing that Microsoft has been a big proponent as well. That's 2 out of 3 of the, most popular operating systems on desktop. So very, very excited to see how that grows and sort of moves forward. And then from like a language perspective, the whole idea of meta programming, like I'm super excited to see where that goes, just because it enables you to build like a better developer experience without having to drastically change the language. I think one of the things that Ian Hicks had mentioned was not wanting to add features to the language at like a high rate that eventually those language features will become deprecated or not worth using. Meta programming allows us as developers and third-party plugin developers to build those experiences, or make the language significantly better without having to depend on Dart and the Dart ecosystem to improve itself drastically over time.
Meta is Greek for about or beyond. And it's probably more accurate to say about by breaking the fourth wall. And I love the term meta. I've used it more and more. My specialty of informatics is a meta specialty, and I've argued that for several years now because we go through all medical specialties, period. The blog that we have on May, June, we actually called a meta blog, specifically because anybody can post and check out and add to this on GitHub, just using a standard GitHub pull request to add to this. I like the idea of meta programming, and I think it's just convenient that they're using that term here now, because before today, I'd literally never heard that term before. So I think it's awesome. Sabrina, welcome. I think you should be able to talk now. I'm going to keep the chat open.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Now, how do I mute myself?
You're a bit quiet. The mute is at the bottom where it says turn off audio at the very bottom on the left side. If you look, yeah.
I see it. Okay, guys, I'm gonna try to talk loud. Can y'all hear me clearly?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I have been very busy developing apps in Power Apps, Xamarin, and messing around with Flutter. So my brain tends to go from one to the other. So I don't know if the stability is going forward in a great direction, but I can tell you this, I'm very excited about the new features of Flutter. I do have a mobile app out there at the App Store for suicide prevention for teens. And I never would have thought that it would be a great need for that. And as soon as I hit the production and sent the package up, then the pandemic hit.
Yeah, unfortunate.
So hopefully we will be able to do more positive things in the future. So as of right now, it seems like a team of one, but I know with time we'll get more people in the organization to buy in. So Dr. Manning, I'm so excited for you, all the things you have done so far. It's really good. Right now, your ears should be burning because we had a meeting about you today. So my task is to pick your brain later to kind of get a feel about the leader that you spoke about. I forgot his name. Anyway, he's new. He's been here since last August.
Awesome.
With developing webs.
Awesome.
And yeah, so I forgot this is recorded, so I better say something nice. Yeah, everything is nice.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
You miss me, guys? I missed you guys.
Yeah. Well, I tweeted actually a photo of all four of us, as well as Ryan's significant other. It was all of us together wearing a pair of pink socks, or holding a pair of pink socks at the global Flutter event back in December of 2019, before all of this fun mess happened. I'm actually intentionally wearing pink socks today, and that's what's on my little Flutter avatar. But I do miss that, and I love that now we have this tech available to us, so that we can, for the next big global Flutter events, we can do this, well, hopefully, depending on the timing, in person, but still keep it in a way that's available for others to join and to interact with us. So, I guess realistically, this kind of leads into the thing that I like, but hey, here's this. and that I have it on my little Flutter avatar, including coffee and a stethoscope, because I figured you got to have something that makes your Flutter unique. And I love the coffee, and I figured I would just run with it. So those Dashatars, I want a plushie. I'm just saying it now. I want a Dashatar plushie with this wonderful green stuff and the hat and everything, because I love it. I love this little Dashatar. I want it. So that's my next thing that I loved about this.
Yeah, I think the whole presentation was really, really well done. You could kind of tell it was a little bit rehearsed, but I think that made for like a really like productive use of time. You know what I mean? They kind of like took you through the different steps that were like things that you're gonna like run into like when putting this stuff together, deploying something. Um, I was really excited to see the Ubuntu, I guess, announcement or update. I think there's like a huge like community of Ubuntu people. Like I know some buddies of mine that they're like Ubuntu Linux guys. So it kind of like it's starting to like pervade all different types of platforms, and it's I can't really. It's really hard to like. I think people underestimate how powerful it is to be able to create one code base, have it run on desktop, web, mobile, Android, iOS. I mean, there's just really nothing like else that can do this. And it's I don't know. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I think it's a natural fit, for sure. Especially, well, the fact that they were able to build it on Material, I thought was really, really cool. And what was it? Yaru is what they've called their brand, so that you can have something that looks like it's a Ubuntu application, but builds directly off of the Material specification. I think that was very well done. What do you all think about Toyota? Question mark, question mark.
Well, I guess he wasn't able to really go into too much detail on it, but it sounds promising.
Yeah. So Toyota is interesting because of the project methodologies that they created. Lean, stop the line mentality and all of those other things that has expanded first off into all of the various aspects of manufacturing, but then it's expanded into different industries. It definitely has hit healthcare, and I've taught about it as well. They are, at least from what has shown, they are not afraid to take on something that breaks from the mold. And the fact that they had mentioned specifically that the touch interactions for auto was something that they really liked. I hadn't even thought about that. Their screen space. One of the things that Flutter does really well is touch interactions by far. But their screens aren't necessarily the phone screens that we're used to every day, and so something that let them interact in a way that you would expect on a mobile device, I thought was really interesting. So,
yeah, I think that you look at the penetration of Android Auto and Android into the car market, and you look at the applications of Fuchsia, which hasn't been announced yet, but it has similar applications to where you can adapt the operating system to fit your needs. And Flutter kind of goes hand in hand with that experience of being able to target every device, being able to build your Android Auto application in tandem with building your mobile application. If you're talking about something like trying to have an experience sort of like a Tesla's experience or something like that. So I think it's a natural marriage. I also think it's a similar natural marriage when you talk about like TVs and how Google TV and Android TV are becoming more and more popular, and it's again, it's that problem of how do I solve for being able to build everywhere with applications that don't necessarily have to be native. When you talk about the fact that they're not using a lot of native APIs, they're really just kind of like a gateway for data entry or a gateway for using video or web services.
Yeah. Realistically, even though we're both based in Charlotte, hence the QC for QC Flutter, first time Ryan and I ever met was at Google I/O in 2019. And I believe it was the lecture that they were talking about going into different form factors, including wearables and including, I forget what the like the Google Home Max or whatever the Nest, yeah, Google Nest Max, and Android Auto makes sense as the next step in that direction. So designing for multiple form factors, it's pretty cool. I guess we could probably use a little bit of this time to show off some of the stuff with regards to Airmeet, unless you guys have other things that you want to talk about in particular. Shrop and I had some fun messing around with all of the various segments. And, oh, he left. Okay, goodbye, Shrop. But if you haven't seen this tech before, I think it's really cool. And I think it's certainly for our upcoming 2 QC Flutter meetups. There's a lot of benefit of the things that we're actually doing. So first thing I think is probably going to be worthwhile as a whole is if I'm jumping in and out of locations, wherever I'm at is where the live stream is. So YouTube link is going to be here. And so if I'm ducking out to show a different thing, it'll be, you won't necessarily see it on this discussion per se. So I think it may be helpful to do that and kind of follow around or whatever. But there's 3 main sections of Airmeet that I found. So there's this part, which is essentially what we're doing here, which is the session. And we've kept it in with the keynote because there wasn't actually a break. But in realistically, what we would have done is gone to in session and then gone to each of these. Technically, we're all the way down to QC Flutter Extended at this point. If I click take a break, this keynote would still be going, but everybody would leave this current. So like this is the main section where everybody is at, and they would go back into the lounge. And I think you all see the go to the lounge or something along those lines. I don't see that on my end right now because as soon as I leave, the session is gonna end. So if I click take a break, we can all go into lounges, and then we can join different round robins by, or I guess different tables, so that you can have personalized discussions. So screen 1 is what we see here, which is the main screen. Screen 2 is, I guess, the lounge and things along those lines, and the final screen, we could call it screen 3 or screen 0, but if you were a presenter, there's the equivalent of a green room where you can go backstage and discuss before an actual session begins. And you can coordinate with other potential speakers too. And so for the session that we just watched, there was a lot of voice and people talking. And so it's really hard for us to discuss things in real time without, just chat. But if we're doing this specifically within like QC Flutter, you can have a session and then take a break, and then we can go out into breakout groups, or you can just duck out now and go into your own lounge with other people and join their chat too. So yeah, thank you, Ryan, for finding all of this. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I think the session stuff makes a lot of sense, especially if you're hosting several sessions at the same time, or if you're having breaks. Like, yeah. I really like those ideas. But then also, like, even though I recommended it, I'm still like discovering, or they're still adding a lot of stuff to the platform, which is awesome. So like, I didn't realize that you can also create Airmeets that are directly linked to a live stream, and then that live stream just comes in to your Airmeet.
Yeah.
So that might be an interesting idea to explore, next time we have like a huge event where we all just want to watch a stream.
Well, I'm gonna share my screen so you see it. Can you see?Maybe question mark.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
I see it.
So the setup, and I think it's interesting to also point out which things are on the free version of Airmeet and which things are on the paid. Because the free version allows you to have one single session over time, so you can't have multiple simultaneous sessions. But you can do it the way that we have this set up, where one ends and the next one begins. You also, I think with this one, it caps at about 100 people. Though if you are in the paid version, you can have up to 100,000 simultaneous people on your call, which is ridiculous. And 16 people can essentially be in our on the stage at the same time, which is oh, did it not actually show which tab, or do you see my screen? If I switch this around, do you see this?
Yeah,
you
I
do.
see that.
Okay, it just says choose the application. Okay, so you can see all this stuff happening. All right, but realistically, the final point is you can set this up to stream in real time. But if you're doing that, I think it's only standard def. And so I'm just using the standard, I'll just bring this up, OBS to do all of my streaming. And so I can actually, click this so that if you want to see my face while I'm talking, hi, it's at the bottom on the actual stream itself. Or if I want to implement like like these overlays of, this thing is starting soon or things along these lines, I can set up all these transitions pretty seamlessly, which I think was pretty useful. And I can go in depth on all that, including the background music that we had at the start. But I would suggest, if we are doing this as a stream, at least for now, given that we have the most flexibility to do this as connected to OBS, to just connect it to OBS. Though I guess the quality of the video of the last couple hours of our stream is purely dependent on the quality of my LAN internet. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what that actually looks like in review. But yeah, do you want to take a break and like mess around with the thing in the background while we're waiting? Because I had also kept this open for others if they wanted to join. I think there are some people that are also going to come back around 5. But do you want to see what it looks like whenever we end a session and do that stuff? Have you messed around with this?
Yeah, I have. I don't know if anybody else wants to mess around with it.
Question mark.
Yeah, we can take a break and people can play around with it, I guess.
Okay. Cool. I'm taking a break. Ha! Too late. Yes. I cannot resume this live session after it. That's fine. So for those that are... Yep. We'll see. I think it's taking its time trying to think through all of this. So did it take us to backstage? Yeah, we're backstage. Okay, we're officially backstage.
Yeah.
All right, and I'm going to go to the lounge just to kind of show that, because I thought that was pretty cool. And I can go to a table. And I am the only person in this table, which is fine. Yo.
Hey there.
Hey, Pearson.
Hey, John.
Yeah, so one thing I was doing for the other QC Flutter meetups is I shrunk the number of tables, probably because 12 is a lot. We normally have like 20 people.
Yeah, we don't need 12. We don't need 12 for the 1 in 2 weeks. I'll tell you that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think the most that we've had during an actual session was close to about 30. But with the opportunity for, you know, since we started recording these, I think the most that have watched a YouTube one of our videos at this point is in the 200 to 300 range, which is pretty good. So you know, there's something to be said about the stuff that we've recorded, and then keeping it publicly available for others to view. Because I think some of the, you know, a lot of the stuff that was said over the last couple hours, I mean, you can, it's a live stream from Google. You can just watch the stream from Google. That's easy. But these things I think would be helpful afterwards. So
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Agreed.
Ryan, I've heard a ton. I've heard a ton about you.
Yeah. Yeah, I realize I guess you two haven't officially met in person yet. So Dave is also a emergency doctor informatician. That is a part of Mayjune. And yeah, Ryan, Carl, Mark Shropshire, and myself are the ones that are, I guess, the 4 co-organizers of the QC Flutter series. And Carl was the one that first got everything together, which is really cool. We're really thankful for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. John describes you, Ryan, as the real deal Flutter developer here in Charlotte. One of the few here. Yeah, so that's awesome.
That's good. That means I'm keeping the facade up.
Well, no, I mean, you had 3 of your questions answered, which is awesome. And you are Charlotte's first and currently only Google Flutter developer expert, which is a worldwide distinction, I think, very well deserved.
Yeah,
so,
hopefully we'll have some more, you know, pretty soon or soon enough. Not
yeah.
way.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But yeah, this is pretty cool. And Ryan is the reason why we have all this, which is pretty interesting. I haven't seen the hands up thing. I haven't seen anybody do a hands up in an actual session, I guess, at this point, which is fine. But I'm assuming it's the same. You just raise your hand and then we let them speak. Is that, or have you messed around with that?
I'd imagine it's the same, but I haven't messed around with it. When I was testing everything before, it was kind of just me.
Yeah.
And then my fiance, I was like forcing her to help me test stuff too. So
that's fair. Yeah. And when we were doing testing, it was Schrop, myself, and Carl. And it, you know, I mean, it was the video carried through from here over to YouTube, which was interesting. So awesome.
Yeah, I might try to, in my own spare time, if there are any other conferences, I might play around with it just by myself to see like what happens if you create an Airmeet for a third-party stream and how that works and all that stuff. So.
Oh yeah, so if you do that, you can hook it to your YouTube stream. You just need the key for that, and for the free version, it's just standard def. And when you have this Airmeet, you can click record. So whenever you start the event, it will automatically, I think, turn that into the stream. So the thing that we did when we were testing this earlier, still recorded the video for the session itself. It didn't record any of the stuff we were doing in the lounge or any of the rest of that. But then we had that available in SD quality.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Yeah. I'm going to start the final extended session that we have, because I figured why not? And now that we figured out these tables, we'll just head over there. And then, yeah, I guess we'll go from there. Sweet. Awesome. All right, so on my side, I can click QC Flutter Extended. or go backstage. Let's see if this works. Yes, I get it. Let's end this session. And let's head all the way down to the last one and start it. All right. Oh, that's interesting. So it went on to the next one rather than the session that we had selected. So that's good to know. Yeah. Huh. And let me make Pearson on the stage and bio. I think it's just the 4 of us right now.
Who's the 4th?
Bio.
Bio.
Okay.
He is also he's a software engineer. He's at Red Hat now. Previously, he was also, I believe, he was also at Mark Shropshire's company, Media Current.
Yep.
They gave the Flutter connection to Drupal and the talk where they had hooked everything up to Firebase as well, which was, I think, a session or 2 before the talk that I gave. It was a pretty good talk. So,
Dave, do you also do a little bit of development?
I do not. I would love to. I would love to. So, but no, I don't.
yeah.
Yeah. I have the Ratatouille opinion when it comes to development. Like, anyone can be a developer.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's I like I like that approach. Yeah, no, it's like everything, right? It's a time, and obviously some commitment. So
Yep.
I think as time evolves, hopefully I'll find myself in a position to kind of start being a little more intentional with learning.
Yeah. And, some of the aspects of informatics are closely related to, but not always directly into development. One of the, I guess, estimates or statistics I had heard when we were doing, when we were talking about this for informatics fellows was that about a quarter of them are either somewhat developer savvy or moderately technical, and so the remaining 3/4 either don't, but they understand how to translate, which I think is a lot. It's just as important, especially within health. But you can always pick something up, and I think it's easiest to find something that is exactly 1 step out of your comfort zone, rather than 3 or 4 steps away. But if you keep doing that, and then you just take a step a couple of years later and you look back to where you were, it's incredible to see the changes that were made. And that's how I think how I got to where I am in Flutter specifically was, it started with coming up with an idea of an app back in Java, and then working on a Java application, and then learning about Kotlin, and then learning about Flutter when around the timing that it was officially unstable or officially live. So the informatics people, at least for those that are interested in Flutter, is definitely growing. And back from May of 2019, And even January is the first live coding event I ever gave. May was the first national conference where I did live coding. It was just one person talking for 2 hours at an event. And then the next year there were 6 of us that were talking over 4 hours. And then this year we're going to be doing the same thing. So it's, the community in that regard is definitely growing, which I think is cool.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's good advice too. Just one step out of your comfort zone and just slow progress, and before you know it, you've actually. Maybe next time you ask me, Ryan, I'll say yes. I develop.
And that's
Yeah, well, I think like informatics, the medical industry is one of those fields where having a developer who has a medical background is hugely beneficial, just because there's so many rules and regulations that a developer by himself, like just having no experience with the medical field and not having somebody to lead them would would take them years to sort of fully understand the industry.
Yeah, and also the way that you work with said data. The data are very complex, and not just the FHIR representation for interoperability, which is really important. And there's a lot of national legislation for this, and it's a global thing. But even you take it all the way down to our blood pressure. The way those data are currently stored are a bit siloed. So from one place to the next, it may be a cuff, or it may be, where they say it's on the left arm versus the right, or they may not make the distinction of if it's actually on your arm or if it's on your leg, or if it's from, a catheter going into your artery to check your blood pressure beat to beat. Just that alone makes it really tough. Or, if it was checking your blood pressure and it wasn't actually physically on you and it says it's in the 30s, is that real data? Like, do you trust that? So the addition of informaticians into design and dev, I think, is a natural fit. I'm biased here, but yes.
No, but it's spot on. Some of the work you've done, right, for the hospitals kind of highlight some of that as well. That you just got to have. I mean, as an example, I was just asked about provider comparisons between test ordering and like CTs and whatnot, and boy, that's an onion of unparalleled size, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That you start unraveling that, and unless if you're non-clinical, it is impossible to unravel that onion. There's just too much. There's too much to it, and even with the clinical lens, it still helps to have the informatician lens, and even with both of those and all of those, it's still incredibly challenging and a huge to get reliable, valid data of something that you can like drive towards some meaningful impact is takes a lot.
It's challenging. And that's been interesting for us, on the Flutter end of when we're trying to teach this to other people that are may have developer experience or not, but almost universally don't have much Flutter experience. How do you teach state management done right? How do you teach the architecture in a way that is easier for others to grasp? And that was the underlying reason for and I love that G. Skinner was featured at the very beginning of this whole series, because their MVCS architecture just clicked. And I found it was a pretty easy way to try and teach that to other people that were in a similar group. To date, I had troubles doing that with Block or some of the other things, though. Qubits, and you start talking about state, and you're going to get lots of people that are annoyed at each other. But your point for your question that you had, Ryan, of do we have essentially a guidebook of options available to us as we're addressing this? I think it's really important because the layouts comparatively are easy. The back end and the architecture, I think, is a lot harder.
Yeah, and I think the important thing there is that since we don't have a guidebook, everybody's kind of designing these systems that are, tightly coupled to the libraries that they chose.
Yeah.
And the thing that I liked about their answer was, yeah, this will be a template, but it should be easy for you to swap in, what state management library you're using or what X library that you're using. Ideally, it's not going to be something because you look at you look at Block, you look at almost every state management library, state management solution, and it basically permeates throughout the application.
Yeah.
Having like a template or having an architectural component set where everything is decoupled will be really nice. So that way you don't have, and that was one of the nice things about MVCS, right? Is that, regardless of what, you're using for your state management, it decouples your state management library from the rest of your business logic.
Yeah. Actually, you were the first one to have informed me of that, and I took it and ran with it and turned it into some videos over here, fully connected through Git. But thank you. But yeah, it makes a huge. I think it makes a huge difference, and I think it helps ease the barrier to entry when you have more notable examples. And I think it's helpful to have something very simple that you can see step by step how it was made. And then something that's extremely complex that's open so that you can see where it can go, or at least be inspired for a way that it can go. I see we have another person. Boom. I'm going to invite you to the stage if you want to chat, and welcome. But yeah, no, I think it's, I think that, and some of the other lectures that I've given, I used just a picture of a bunch of blocks, like building blocks that are modular, so that you can go from one to the next to the side and just swap in between packages if you want. But as long as you have a means for it to be modular, I think that's really helpful. Hi, Boom. Maybe.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
You're a bit quiet. Say something else.
Basically, I joined just now.
Yeah. Okay, we hear you.
Okay. So I'm started to work on the Flutter application, one of the Flutter application. So I'm thinking of how to implement all those things. So I came through this meetup, so I tried to join this one.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining. I know the timing of our discussions was a little bit different from when the Flutter Engage series ended, but yeah, any questions you have, we're happy to answer as we can, or at least as best as we can.
Okay.
We were kind of debriefing some of the stuff from the Flutter Engage series over the course of the afternoon. Did you have any thoughts or any considerations on that part, or anything you wanted to cover?
Actually, I haven't attended that one. So at work, it was a little bit late, so I just joined. So
Oh yeah, no worries. I think the biggest thing, so Flutter for Web is now official. Null safety is now a thing, and I love that they use the term that they didn't call it Dart 3 because null safety did not break your code. So you have the capability to move to null safety when all of your packages that you use are ready, and when you are ready to make that leap. And they actually show you step by step how you can either just run the migration tool on its own, or what is probably better is to run the tool, look at its suggestions, and think through which ones you want it to have as nullable variables versus those that are not. I thought that was a really good one. Let's see what else. What else was, I think, very high value from from this part as a whole. Flutter Fix I thought was pretty cool, where you can actually use Quick Fix to make more in-depth suggestions to adjust your code. And they did a decent amount in terms of monetization, as well as design considerations to push forward the concept of the unicorn designer developer. I thought that was pretty cool as well. But yeah, it was an interesting global event, and it's officially out for web and for null safety, and as well as available for desktop. It kind of surprised us with that part.
Nice. I have one question. There is a flag? Sorry. So I have an application. Like, is there a way to highlight the elements with the keyboards, like tabbing or something like that?
You mean when you're in your IDE? Or
no, in the application. So I want to navigate the application with the keyboard. Is there any documentation that I can follow?
Yeah, so there you can tap into keyboard events. I believe there was an article posted like in the last few days that talked about how to use keyboard events in Flutter. It is fairly new. You'll notice, like, I was actually playing around with some of the library, or not the library, some of the websites that were shared for Flutter for Web, and you can definitely see there's still some bugs there. So, but it is possible to tap into the keyboard events. And I think there's what's called a keyboard listener if you wanted to do that manually. So they have different listeners that you can attach to your widgets. I think there's like a mouse listener, and there's also a keyboard listener if you wanted to manually sort of handle, tabbing and things of that nature.
Okay. If possible, could you send that blog link?
I'm sorry?
If possible, could you send the blog link that you referred somewhere?
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And do you know if those are separate from handle key or things along those lines? Have you seen those as well?
I don't know. Is that on the gesture detector?
So I had, it's been a while, but one of the previous things I did for code was actually looking through all of the logical keys using raw key events. And I can share my screen to actually show that in more detail. This was addressing a problem that was still on the stack when I had last looked at it, which was back in November. It was in the master channel. I have not looked to see if that has gone all the way through. The means for handling keyboard events and things along those lines. I guess I could probably look that up really quick while we're talking. And it looks like it was merged. Okay, cool. Yay. This was the issue that I had done. So, I mean, I can share and show what I had done for keyboard events on a project that is closed source, if you want to see that. But I'm not sure how valid that is now, since this bug that I addressed is now fixed. But it's up to you. I'm happy to share it or show it. Question mark?
Yeah. If you could send that link, I'll try to take a look at it.
I'll take a look in the chat. If you see the chat that's here, and I guess I could probably post that into. I'll share my screen as well, just so you can see it. Let me know if you see my shared screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sure. And I will. This was the Figma. This is where I added my pink socks, by the way. I don't know if this is valid anymore, or if we even need to use raw key event values. But essentially, my understanding was logical keyboard keys for like arrow down and arrow up This is what I did on a Flutter for Web application back in November, so that I could use the arrow keys to scroll a little bit, and then I could use the spacebar to scroll a larger amount, and the same amount as page down and page up, and then the home and ends to actually bring you all the way to the top and to the bottom. And then essentially I was using, what was I using? An item scroll controller was what I was using on this, which, yeah, I mean, that was how I set it up. But I think given the stuff that you see now from Ryan is probably more relevant today, since whenever I had written that code was when I knew they were looking to let you scroll, but that functionality had not yet been implemented.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I just shared an article that I think was done this within the last month that basically talks about doing keyboard shortcuts in Flutter Desktop, and I'd imagine it's about the same process for web.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. I see the link. Wilson.in.
Yeah. And I will, just so that we have some memory of this, I will also put this in the chat on this YouTube stream. Yeah. Anything else you wanted, or that you had specific questions on?
I think that's it for now.
Okay, sounds good. I'll stop sharing my screen then. Yeah, so I thought it was awesome. As per usual, they gave us a large number of surprises at the very beginning. iRobot seems really cool, by the way.
Yeah, this was in terms of like the sheer announcements, like this is probably the most announcements they've given us in, maybe a couple of years.
Yeah.
Since they initially announced Flutter Web, this is probably the biggest in terms of the sheer number of announcements. And they didn't even really get to touch on like the new widgets that they added, other than like the 2-pane widget. Like they didn't even really get to touch on a lot of stuff. So I imagine, it's going to take a little while to process, everything that was added.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions on which ones we should try or probably look through first?
There's actually a list. I mean, we haven't, from QC Flutter, we haven't had anyone talk on like Navigator 2.0. We haven't had anyone speak on state restoration, which, we haven't even really begun to talk about a lot of the new features implemented since the release in December. So it would be good. Like I do have a list of like all the things that were added or all the things that were announced.
Oh, that's good.
Between December and now. So it might be good just to like work through those things. And for some of those things, I've been reaching out to potential guest speakers to talk about. So we should have some guest speakers coming in fairly rapidly over the next few months.
That's good. That's great. Do you think we'll, at least for the time being, we'll stick with the same setup for QC Flutter? Specifically
in terms of using Airstream?
Airmeet, yeah. So I guess
Airmeet.
the question being, since we have this where we have a topic that's covered within, then we have a breakout session where we can actually chat in between. Do we even need to harness that? Because we now have that as a feature. Certainly, I think you could make the argument either way with this being purely didactics versus with the opportunity for discussions in between.
Yeah, I think for the meetups where we only have like one session,
yeah,
maybe it doesn't make sense to have the breakout rooms, but I do like the idea of having like tables at the beginning of the meetup.
Yeah.
That people can, because we have tons of people, or not tons, but we every now and then we have a few new faces. So it'd be nice to give people an opportunity to socialize before the event even starts.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a chance to look into the you and I have both linked to it, but the upcoming open source tool for an IDE available in available for Dart and Flutter development? What was
You're
it?
referring to, I think it was like Zep or something like
Zep.
that.
Yeah, Zep.
Yeah, yeah. Um, no, I think you have to. So I requested access, but right now it's like preview or beta access only.
Okay.
But I mean, it's very much, at least just from looking at it, it looks almost exactly like Code Sandbox if you've done JavaScript development. The biggest thing for me is the fact that it looks like you can integrate directly with pub.dev, so
Yeah.
you shouldn't have to like build the web app completely, yourself to be able to preview and demo features. You should be able to go in and play around with libraries, and it'll be interesting to see if that even eventually makes its way back into pub.dev, because it would be nice if you could be in pub.dev reviewing like a library and then jump out into like the code sandbox sort of atmosphere, or even have it running directly in pub.dev, regardless of whether or not it has dependencies. I could see those both being like hugely beneficial, for us as developers, like when we're looking at third-party dependencies, like being able to actually play with something and tweak it without having to go and download it, install it, create a whole Flutter Hello World application. Just being able to play with it by directly in your browser would be huge.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I like your idea of within pub.dev being able to see the example and mess around with the example documentation and see it update your code.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, yeah, we haven't mentioned this thus far, but the app size where they had the tree maps. That's it's I tweeted about this or whatever, but the person who invented tree maps is one of the grandfathers of usability, and he has a article that says overview first, zoom, rank, and filter, then details on demand, and he repeated that line 10 separate times, and it's one of the most commonly cited articles in informatics, and I love that they put in tree maps into this so that you can dynamically see the size of your folder structure, so you can optimize your app.
Yeah, we could have used that. We actually had a whole app size issue with our CI builds that we could have used that a few weeks ago. So it's nice to see something like that get added.
Yeah.
And you get to being able to see, okay, these third-party dependencies are taking up 80% of my app size or something like that, which I'm sure is going to be the case for anybody who's using Firebase.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Have you, well, I guess I'm not sure if you know this or not, but I'm curious if that works for Android, iOS, as well as web, so that we can see the structure for the various systems. Because I think that'll also be, especially as you're building something as a Flutter for web app, to know how much space it'll take.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd imagine that that's the end goal, right? Because when you're talking about app size, like web app size is almost always the one that matters the most, just because, your app size, you're directly affected when you're on a browser by, the size of the application that you have to download. So it would make sense for the web, and, it would make sense for, mobile desktop as well. So I'd imagine, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Cool. So I guess Yeah, I'm not sure how we're going to do searchable text. I think the point being for their static site, as done. I haven't looked into that, but that was one of the questions that I had asked through whatever various channels that they had. At least on a Flutter for Web app, that was one of the things that I had noticed as a challenge, was being able, and I know there's a widget that you can use to select your text, but it seemed like it was mostly designed for you to tap than for you to click. And that was kind of the impression that I had gotten. And I'm curious as to where things will go as we're continuing to build this as an option for for a web app.
Yeah, text is, it's that area, in general, like the technology choices that they made make sense.
Oh yeah,
But I can understand, I can understand them, but at the same time, I feel like there's always going to be trade-offs with the web versus when you're talking about desktop and mobile, at least until there's some way for you to update UI with something like WebAssembly, because then you can stop have if you can use WebAssembly to build your applications, or even if you can use like a more advanced version of WebGL, then you have that same level of control that you would have when you're talking about building for desktop and building for mobile. But right now I don't see, like, everything seems like it would be harder to implement versus just building things using a normal web technologies.
yeah.
If
Use the tool that's available.
especially if you already have a little bit of a JavaScript background, like it just wouldn't make sense. I had talked about this with some coworkers this morning, where I was working on something freelance, and it would have took a tremendous amount or a decent amount of effort for me to build the thing that I needed to build. Even though I had a mobile application, I was basically building an admin client, and it would have taken way more time for me to build that admin client in Flutter
Mm-hmm.
versus me just reaching for something like Svelte or React. I think I ended up going with Svelte, but it took me a matter of a few hours to have something completely workable in Svelte, where it would have taken me a decent chunk of time in Flutter.
That's fair. One of the things I've noticed, at least on the PWA side, prior in beta, and I'm hopeful when it gets implemented, or now that it is officially unstable, the tap functions I found worked really well on a tablet and a phone. And when I was clicking with the mouse, sometimes the on tap event wasn't getting registered or wasn't registering in the way that I would expect. So I would have it like show or close just another widget or a dialogue or something along those lines. And on a phone, I can just do that no problem. You tap it, it shows up, you tap away, it's gone. But the button, when I was clicking it, did not seem to be working in the same way. And I haven't tested this in the last, few weeks since I left beta to keep messing around in stable. But that was something that I was hopeful would be addressed, or if not, then I guess it turns into an issue if I can figure out where that issue is.
Yeah, I know you also might want to verify some of the things that you've seen against Flutter Master, because I know they've made significant improvements with Flutter Web. Yeah, significant updates and improvements in Master that some people have been talking about. So I am interested in seeing how far they can get. How good of a performance and how good of an experience can they eke out of web? Like, can you truly make it competitive enough for me where I'm not even thinking about will this take me longer to do in Flutter versus doing some JavaScript framework.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I see and love the potential, and I'm hopeful, as now it's officially stable, and certainly the stuff in master, hopeful to see where all this stuff goes, which is super cool.
Yep. And it's all there's nowhere you can go but up from a lot of these positions. Like when you talk about desktop and web, like you can only go up.
Yeah.
Especially with desktop, like, if you're talking cross-platform development, you only have a handful of solutions. And even if you're talking native development, it's expensive enough to deter a lot of companies from doing it. So, being able to provide this great experience and being able to provide great performance, there's only up. You can only go up.
Yeah, agreed. And with that said, it's interesting they didn't really talk too much about animations. Philip did, but I remember from prior ones they usually would at least talk about was it Rise or Flare? I can't remember. But
Rise now.
Rise now, yeah. But like that, and I think that the current talk of specifically being the unicorn designer developer was the bridge between something all the way in depth as Rise, where you were animating your bone structure and setting up keyframes and the timing in between that, to just setting up the layouts of your app. And I think that was kind of maybe as a middle ground so that we can get more developers comfortable with taking ownership of some of the designs.
Yeah, when I think about the areas of Flutter development, which could be significantly easier than they are now, I think about animations, and how you do have some declarative animation containers, but when you're using the imperative stuff, it can be a little bit verbose.
Yeah.
I think about navigation. Obviously, everybody's written at length about how Navigator 2.0 wasn't necessarily a step in the right direction, or at least not the step that we needed to take to make app development a lot simpler from that perspective. And then what else would I think of? I think those are probably the top two. Also, like layouts, how you do layouts, how you handle things like using Flexbox or using grid views and how they scale. And, we've all seen some level of render overflow.
A render box error. Yeah.
Yeah, render box error. So
yes.
I think, that how we solve for that experience, I think it could be a little bit more intuitive, I guess you could say.
And they did address some of that today in the dev tools. And they showed it from the IntelliJ Android Studio side. I haven't, I will, I think it'll be interesting to see on VS Code, the dev tools previously, I don't think they were as robust as IntelliJ's. And so within IntelliJ, if you saw that render box error, it just showed this nice red spot. That was a box that you can just right click and fix it. I'd love to see that on VS Code too, if it's not there yet. I just haven't tested it.
Yep.
But yeah, that's awesome. And the concept of the declarative UI and the way that you've defined it, I think it's one of the things that really is has helped a lot with regards to what we have here with Flutter. So yeah, I don't know enough about Navigator 2 to have much of an opinion one way or another, at least at this point. I know it's here, I just don't know. I don't know if I understand it enough yet.
Cool. I guess does anybody have any other questions or anything they'd like to bring up about, Flutter Engage?
I think we have officially wrapped up our QC Flutter Engage, unless you have anything else you want to cover, Ryan.
Nope. I think that's
awesome.
everything for me.
Well, thank you everybody for joining the first ever QC Flutter live stream and all that has entailed. And I will send the link to our YouTube video in our Slack channel. So take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Awesome. Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Appreciate you guys. Take care.
Mm-hmm.